Sure, it's disappointing to spend 2 months on that mountain and not make it to the top, but as long as you get back alive with all your fingers and toes and having learned some good lessons along the way, I consider that success. Thanks you guys. People do ask me, though, they always go like, oh, you know, would you ever go back? And typically my answer is no. So I kind of feel like I had that whole experience. And occasionally I would get the urge to go back, and it was usually when someone was sort of giving me a hard time about it. Like, you know, I'd be at a dinner party or something, and the host of the party would introduce me to the other guests, and he would say, this is my friend Allison. She climbed Mount Everest. And then the guy across the table from me would go, oh, no way, all the way to the top? And then you have to say, well, no, we actually turned around about, 200 feet or so from the top. Oh, so you didn't climb Mount Everest. I'm like, no, like I gave him the whole spiel about, we were on that mountain for 2 months. Getting to the top is optional. Getting down is mandatory. And he was like, yeah, but if you weren't at the very top, you didn't climb it. It doesn't count. I was like, okay, what do you do, tough guy? And he worked for J.P. Morgan. So he said, oh, I work for J.P. Morgan. And I said, oh, no way, you're the CEO of J.P. Morgan? And he said, no, I'm not the CEO. I work in fixed income trading. I'm like, well then, I guess you don't really work for J.P. Morgan then, do you? Because if you're not at the very top, then it doesn't count. And he's like, well, that's totally different. But I actually did end up changing my mind about going back because of my friend Meg. I really admired her so much. She actually beat lymphoma twice in her 20s. And then, unfortunately, at age 37, she died of the flu from a lung infection. It's a long story. It really rocked my world, though. But I wanted to do something to honor my friend Meg. So I actually engraved her name in my ice axe, and I headed back to Mount Everest just last year, 8 years after my failed attempt. So this is a shot of me heading up over this area called the Geneva Spur on my way to the high camp. And then when I finally got to the high camp last year, go figure, in comes a storm again. And I thought, I cannot believe I'm back here in the same exact position, ready for my summit bid, and in comes the weather. And most teams actually abandoned their summit attempt because the conditions were horrible, but I thought, I'm just gonna get out of my tent and start heading to the summit. And about 2 hours into my summit attempt, I saw all these other headlamps on the mountain. And I thought, okay, this is a good sign. This means other people feel like this mountain is climbable. But then I realized that the headlamps were coming toward me, and they were people who were calling it quits and coming back down. And you can see that the clouds totally closed in. Visibility was horrible. It's a 10,000-foot drop on this side, an 8,000-foot drop on this side. I couldn't see too far in front of me, but sometimes I think you don't have to have total clarity to just put one foot in front of the other. So that's what I did, and I'm happy to report that just last year, on May 24th, I did make it to the summit of Mount Everest in honor of my friend Meg. Thanks. And for me, it was the completion of what's known as the Adventure Grand Slam, which is climbing the 7 summits, the highest peak on each continent, and skiing to both the North and South Pole. And everybody asked me what that felt like what it felt like to go back to that mountain 8 years later after everything I'd been through and fight my way to the storm and finally stand on top of the highest mountain in the world. And I can honestly tell you, it just wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, because let's think about this for a second, you guys. It's just the top of a mountain. And standing on that summit doesn't mean anything. Because it's really about the lessons you learn along the way and what you're going to do with those lessons going forward. And had I not had that failed attempt in 2002, I don't think I would have known how to weather the storm last year when I went up in 2010. And I know that I did my absolute best when I stood on the summit of Mount Everest last year, but there are always going to be more mountains to climb. So I know that going forward, I have to be even better. Thank you so much for climbing with me today. You guys are awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alison Levine. Coolest lady I know.